In the heart of feudal Japan, a towering African man grips a katana, his dark skin gleaming in the sun. Crowds gasp, some calling him a god, others a demon. But Oda Nobunaga, Japan's most powerful warlord, sees only one thing: a warrior. Once a slave, now a force that defies every rule of the land, he's about to change history. Battles will test him, loyalties will be broken, and legends will be written. This is Yasuke, the African samurai who rose from the impossible and challenged an empire. Imagine a towering African man stepping into feudal Japan, his dark skin gleaming under the sun, gripping a katana with a calm intensity. Around him, hundreds of Japanese citizens stare in shock, some whispering, "Is he a demon?" Others murmur, "A god?" But the most powerful warlord in Japan sees something else entirely: a warrior. This is the story of Yasuke, the man who went from enslaved servant to samurai, standing beside legends, yet erased from history until now. The year is 1579. Japan is engulfed in chaos. The country has been locked in the Sengoku period, the age of warring states, for over a century. Daimyo, powerful regional lords, fight endlessly for control. Villages burn, armies clash, and the emperor exists only in name. Real power belongs to those who are strong enough to seize it. Into this world sails an Italian Jesuit missionary named Alejandro Valiano, aiming to spread Christianity and convert souls. But he brings something far more unusual than faith: Yasuke. We don't know Yasuke's exact birthplace, though historians suggest Mozambique or Ethiopia. He was likely captured, sold into slavery, and eventually became Valiano's servant. Standing over 6 feet tall, with skin so dark that when he arrived in Japan, people couldn't believe their eyes, Yasuke was unlike anyone they had ever seen. And yet, Valiano didn't hide him. He paraded Yasuke through cities, knowing the spectacle would attract crowds, and crowds meant attention, and attention meant opportunities to preach. On March 27, 1581, they reached Kyoto, the imperial capital. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands surged to see the foreign giant. People were crushed in the frenzy. Some died in the chaos. Soldiers had to rescue Valiano and Yasuke, taking them to a temple for safety. But one man didn't just want to see Yasuke from afar. He wanted to meet him. That man was Oda Nobunaga, the most dangerous and ambitious warlord in Japan. Nobunaga was a revolutionary. While other daimyos clung to tradition, he embraced innovation. He used firearms on a massive scale, promoted people based on skill rather than birth, demolished barriers, encouraged trade. Brutal when necessary, he crushed rebellion without mercy, yet remained open to foreign ideas. By 1581, he controlled nearly half of Japan, poised to unify the country entirely. When Nobunaga heard about Yasuke causing chaos in Kyoto, he summoned Valiano and his unusual servant to Atsuchi Castle. The moment Nobunaga saw Yasuke, he was transfixed. Convinced that Yasuke's skin was dyed, Nobunaga ordered him to strip and wash, but the color didn't fade. Fascinated, Nobunaga spoke with Yasuke through interpreters, learning about Africa, his journey, his life. And here, something remarkable happened. Nobunaga saw potential. Yasuke wasn't just tall or strong. He was intelligent, adaptable, a survivor. He had endured slavery, long journeys, and foreign lands, learning languages and customs along the way. Nobunaga recognized a warrior hidden in a servant. Within weeks, Nobunaga made a decision that shocked his court. He freed Yasuke from Valiano's service, gave him a house, a stipend, even servants. Then, defying every convention, he began training him as a samurai.
Yasuke wasn't only trained, he became Nobunaga's personal retainer, his weapons bearer, his bodyguard, his constant companion. He carried Nobunaga's swords, a privilege reserved for the most trusted samurai, attended private meetings, and fought in battles alongside elite warriors. In less than a year, a man who had been a slave joined the highest warrior class in Japan. But what did it mean to be a samurai? It wasn't just skill, it was status, land, authority, and honor. Yasuke carried both the katana and wakizashi, legally restricted to samurai, and received property and a stipend. He fought in real battles, not ceremonial skirmishes, earning respect from those around him. Contemporary records like the Chronicle of Lord Nobunaga refer to him in terms associated with samurai rank. His exact status remains debated. Some say full samurai, others a unique honorary retainer. But what's undeniable is that Yasuke's transformation was extraordinary. Life at Atsuchi Castle was surreal. Yasuke learned Japanese customs quickly, attended tea ceremonies, no theater, military councils. Crowds traveled just to see him. Children followed him, artists painted him, poets wrote about him. Yet despite the spectacle, he faced real danger. In 1581, he joined Nobunaga in a campaign against the Takeda clan, fighting in brutal, large-scale battles, wielding weapons he had never touched months earlier. His height and strength became formidable advantages in combat. Over the next year, Yasuke became more than a curiosity. He symbolized Nobunaga's unconventional genius, demonstrating the value of merit over birth, skill over tradition. But in feudal Japan, success bred enemies, and those enemies were watching, waiting for the right moment. This was only the beginning of a story that would defy everything Japan thought it knew about loyalty, courage, and honor. Yasuke's journey from enslaved servant to trusted warrior had begun, and the world would never forget the power of that transformation. After that first meeting with Oda Nobunaga, Yasuke's life transformed overnight. From a curiosity paraded through Kyoto's streets, he became something far more dangerous, a samurai in training, a warrior in the making. Nobunaga didn't see just a giant black man. He saw potential, strength, intelligence, and adaptability. Within weeks, Yasuke was freed from the Jesuit service. He was given a home, a stipend, and servants, luxuries unimaginable for someone who had been enslaved. Training began immediately. Nobunaga personally supervised Yasuke, introducing him to the rigorous martial discipline of samurai life. He learned to wield the katana with precision, to understand strategy, to move silently, to anticipate his opponent's intentions. But this was more than physical training. Yasuke had to learn the complex social hierarchies of Nobunaga's court. He studied etiquette, protocol, and Japanese language. For a man who had just crossed continents, survived slavery, and endured the trauma of being displayed as a spectacle, it was an extraordinary feat. Nobunaga's fascination with Yasuke grew. He invited him into his inner circle, into private councils, into rooms where the most sensitive strategies were discussed. Yasuke was not just a servant or novelty, he was a trusted companion, carrying Nobunaga's weapons, guarding him, fighting alongside him in battles. Nobunaga treated him as an equal in function if not in status, and for Yasuke each day was a lesson in survival, strategy, and honor. But fame came fast. People traveled for days just to see him. Artists sketched him. Children followed him through castle towns, marveling at his size and dark skin. Nobunaga's enemies took notice as well. In a world obsessed with loyalty, appearance, and bloodlines, Yasuke's presence disrupted expectations. Some feared him, some admired him, some plotted against him. Yet through it all, he remained focused on his role, proving that survival and adaptability could transcend race, origin, or past. Yasuke's first real test came on a military campaign against the Terada clan in central Japan. This wasn't ceremonial. Thousands of troops clashed in fields of blood. Yasuke fought side by side with seasoned samurai, his height and strength giving him a deadly advantage. Contemporary records describe him as a man of terrifying presence, able to wield weapons with both precision and power. Each skirmish strengthened his reputation, not just as a foreign novelty, but as a warrior capable of facing death without hesitation. Through these campaigns, Yasuke learned what it meant to be a samurai: loyalty, discipline, honor, and sacrifice. He experienced the brutal realities of warfare, the screams, the chaos, the burning villages, but also the exhilaration of strategy, the thrill of skillful combat, the pride of standing beside Nobunaga in moments that would shape Japan's history. Yet, despite this rising fame, Yasuke was acutely aware of his precarious position. In feudal Japan, a foreigner's rise could attract admiration or deadly jealousy. Nobunaga's enemies, both external and within his own ranks, were always watching. Yasuke's strength and loyalty made him an asset, but also a target. Each day he had to navigate not only the battlefield, but the intricate web of politics, intrigue, and social hierarchy that defined Nobunaga's court. As Yasuke grew into his role, he became more than a samurai in training. He became a symbol. Nobunaga used him to demonstrate that merit, skill, and loyalty could outweigh birthright and tradition. He showed the world that even in a society rigidly defined by hierarchy, extraordinary individuals could rise. And for Yasuke, this was a lesson that would define him forever. Survival and honor were inseparable, but both required courage, discipline, and an unwavering sense of purpose. By the end of this period, Yasuke had earned his place as one of Nobunaga's most trusted retainers. The man who had once been a slave, a spectacle for crowds, had become an integral part of Japan's most powerful warlord's inner circle. He carried swords reserved for samurai, he fought in campaigns that shaped history, and he stood in a world that was not his own, earning respect through sheer strength, intelligence, and loyalty. But as Yasuke reached the height of his power and prestige, the storm that had been quietly gathering in Nobunaga's court was about to explode. Envy, betrayal, and ambition were simmering in the shadows, and soon Yasuke would be forced to confront challenges far beyond combat, tests of loyalty, survival, and moral courage that would decide not only his fate, but the fate of Nobunaga's legacy.
By 1582, Yasuke had become inseparable from Nobunaga, his presence commanding attention wherever they went. From the streets of Kyoto to the halls of Azuchi Castle, people whispered about the towering African warrior who carried the weapons of the most powerful man in Japan. But even as Yasuke's star rose, danger loomed closer than anyone realized. Nobunaga's brilliance and ambition had created enemies everywhere. Rivals humiliated, allies resentful, and generals whose loyalty was paper-thin. Among them was Akechi Mitsuhide, a trusted general whose simmering grievances against Nobunaga were about to erupt. On the night of June 20th, 1582, Nobunaga rested at Honnoji, a Buddhist temple in Kyoto converted into a temporary residence. His retinue was small, lightly armed, confident that loyalty and fear would protect them. Yasuke stood beside him, vigilant as ever, a silent sentinel in the dim candlelight. Outside, Mitsuhide's forces quietly surrounded the temple, nearly 13,000 strong. The stage was set for one of the most dramatic betrayals in Japanese history. At dawn, the attack began. Flames erupted across the temple grounds. Soldiers stormed from every side, cutting down anyone who resisted. Chaos erupted within Honnoji. Nobunaga quickly realized what was happening. This was not a minor rebellion or local uprising. This was a calculated strike by one of his own generals. The temple, a place of temporary safety, became a battlefield. Yasuke fought with every ounce of his strength. Contemporary records describe him as a figure of overwhelming presence, swinging swords, defending Nobunaga's retreating retainers, and creating a path through the chaos. His training, his discipline, his survival instincts, all honed in the months under Nobunaga, were tested to their limits. The man who had once been a spectacle for the curious had now become a force that could strike fear into seasoned warriors. Despite Yasuke's efforts, the situation deteriorated rapidly.
Nobunaga knew the end was near. Trapped in the inner chambers, with fire encroaching and enemies at the door, he made a choice that would forever etch his name in history. Ritual suicide, or seppuku. Yasuke witnessed the final moments of a man he had come to respect and serve with unwavering loyalty. The weight of history pressed down on him, yet even as the temple burned, his duty did not waver. After Nobunaga's death, Yasuke could have fled. The chaos offered an opportunity to escape unnoticed, but he didn't. Instead, he gathered the remaining retainers and fought his way toward Nijo Castle, where Nobunaga's heir, Oda Nobunaga, was staying. Protecting Nobunaga was not just about loyalty, it was about preserving the legacy of the Oda clan and maintaining a fragile sense of order amid total collapse. Yasuke's tactical instincts, honed under Nobunaga's guidance, became critical as they prepared for a last stand. Mitsuhide's forces were relentless. The assault on Nijo Castle was overwhelming. Yasuke and the loyal retainers were vastly outnumbered, fighting in a desperate bid to protect Nobunaga's son. Nobunaga, like his father, eventually chose seppuku rather than be captured. One by one, the defenders fell, yet Yasuke remained, defiant, fighting until there was no hope left. For a man who had once been a slave only a few years prior, standing alone against impossible odds, this was the ultimate testament to his courage, skill, and honor. Finally, Yasuke was captured. Mitsuhide could have executed him instantly. Yasuke had fought against him, had been one of Nobunaga's most trusted retainers, and represented a living symbol of his fallen lord's power. Yet Mitsuhide made a decision that has puzzled historians ever since. He spared Yasuke. Declaring that Yasuke was a foreigner who knew nothing of Japanese ways, he returned him to the Jesuits. This decision was layered, part contempt, part mercy. Yasuke survived, but at the cost of recognition. The man who had proven himself in battle, who had defended his lord and preserved a dynasty, was dismissed simply for being an outsider. And yet his survival ensured that the story of the Black Samurai would live on, even if his ultimate fate remained shrouded in mystery. The events at Honnoji marked the end of Yasuke's rise in Nobunaga's court, but they also cemented his legacy as a warrior of extraordinary courage and loyalty. For 1 year, he had transcended slavery, foreignness, and social expectation to stand at the center of Japan's most volatile power struggles. His feats on the battlefield, his presence in the inner circle, and his unwavering dedication made him unforgettable, not just to those who saw him, but to history itself. Yet Yasuke's story did not end with survival. Questions remained. Where would he go? What path could a foreign warrior take in a land that had almost worshipped him one moment and tried to kill him the next? His journey, his choices, and the mysteries that followed would challenge assumptions about loyalty, honor, and identity in a society that had briefly, spectacularly, allowed him to exist at its highest level.
After the smoke cleared at Honnoji, Yasuke found himself alive, yet completely unmoored. The man who had risen from slavery to stand beside one of Japan's most powerful warlords was now a free man in a foreign land, stripped of rank, yet carrying the weight of history on his shoulders. Mitsuhide's decision to spare him was as shocking as the betrayal itself. Yasuke had fought, bled, and survived in service to Nobunaga, only to be cast back into uncertainty. Returned to the Jesuits, Yasuke had a choice: stay with the Europeans, attempt to navigate the chaos of post-Nobunaga Japan, or seek a new life elsewhere. The Jesuits, though sympathetic, offered little guidance. Their network was small, and the political landscape was treacherous. Japan was entering a period of consolidation under Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Nobunaga's former ally, who was determined to unify the country. For Yasuke, that meant any attempt to return to a life of influence was fraught with danger. Contemporary Jesuit records suggest that Yasuke was calm, measured, and surprisingly unshaken. He had seen war, witnessed betrayal, and faced the death of the man he had served loyally. Yet his survival instincts were honed. He understood that life after Honnoji required cunning, patience, and discretion. His name, his presence, and even his identity as a samurai would have drawn unwanted attention.
Japan was not ready to fully accept a foreign warrior, no matter how skilled or loyal. Historians have debated what Yasuke did next. One theory is that he returned to Africa or Portuguese-controlled territories in India. The Jesuits maintained shipping routes across Asia and to the East African coast. If Yasuke had wished to leave, he could have traveled under their protection. Yet there is no record of him departing Japan, leaving his ultimate fate obscured. Another theory suggests he stayed in Japan, perhaps quietly joining a Christian community, living under a new name, hidden from the authorities who would soon outlaw Christianity entirely. Some speculate that Yasuke became a wandering warrior or even a Buddhist monk, as many samurai did after the defeat of their lords. Monasteries offered anonymity, spiritual solace, and a place for reflection, where one's appearance mattered less than one's commitment to discipline and faith. The physicality, skill, and discipline that made Yasuke formidable in battle would have made him respected in these circles, even if his African origins marked him as an outsider. Regardless of where he went, Yasuke's presence in Japan left a lasting impression. Contemporary chronicles describe him as a man of remarkable strength and intelligence, a rare combination that had allowed him to rise from obscurity to prominence. Children followed him, artists painted him, and poets wrote of the towering African warrior who carried the swords of Nobunaga. Yet, after 1582, the trail goes cold. Yasuke vanishes from historical records, leaving only fragments of his incredible journey. The disappearance of Yasuke is not merely a historical curiosity, it's a reflection of the precariousness of memory itself. For centuries, his story existed only in scattered Jesuit accounts and Japanese chronicles. Occasional mentions in scholarly works painted him as an exotic footnote, a novelty rather than a figure of substance. It wasn't until the 20th century that historians began to piece together his life, exploring the complexity of his rise, his role in Japanese warfare, and the broader implications of his presence in a strictly hierarchical society. Modern interpretations of Yasuke's life are diverse. Some view him as a symbol of resilience, an embodiment of human adaptability in the face of unimaginable challenges. Others focus on the racial dynamics of feudal Japan, analyzing how his skin both distinguished him and limited his opportunities. Yet all agree on one point: he achieved something extraordinary, even if history did not fully record it. The legacy of Yasuke also raises profound questions about the nature of loyalty, honor, and belonging. He was not Japanese by birth, yet he became samurai in every meaningful sense. He fought in battles, earned the respect of his lord, and carried out duties that few could imagine a foreigner performing. And when all fell apart, he faced uncertainty with the same courage that had defined his rise. In a society defined by rigid social structures, Yasuke's life demonstrates that merit, courage, and adaptability could, at least briefly, transcend boundaries. Yet the mystery of his final years is more than a question of where he went. It's a question of how he reconciled the past. Did Yasuke long for Africa, for the homeland he had never truly known? Did he mourn Nobunaga and the retainers who fell around him, carrying the weight of their deaths into silence? Or did he find a way to live, to integrate into Japanese society, leaving behind the identity that had marked him as both wonder and outsider? What we do know is that Yasuke's story is far from the only example of forgotten heroes. History is full of figures who rose against impossible odds, only to vanish from memory. His tale reminds us that human achievement is often temporary, that recognition is fragile, and that the line between legend and obscurity can be perilously thin. Yet the fascination with Yasuke endures, inspiring books, anime, games, and scholarly works, proving that stories of courage, loyalty, and transformation never truly die. As we consider Yasuke's life, we also confront the limits of historical certainty. Records are incomplete, biased, and filtered through the perspectives of those who wrote them. The Jesuits were fascinated by his foreignness, Nobunaga by his utility, and Mitsuhide by his contemptuous mercy. Each lens colors what we know, reminding us that history is always partial, and that the gaps can be as telling as the facts themselves. By exploring these uncertainties, we gain more than knowledge, we gain insight into the human experience. Yasuke's journey challenges assumptions about race, power, and identity. It illustrates the fragility of privilege and the strength of adaptability. And it leaves us with questions that may never be answered. What becomes of a hero when the world that elevated him collapses? How does one survive when all the structures that gave life meaning vanish overnight? Yasuke's disappearance is a story in itself, a final act of mystery that ensures his legend persists. In surviving Honoji and Nijio Castle, he defied death and expectation. In vanishing afterward, he ensured that history could never fully contain him. For audiences today, his tale is both inspiration and challenge, to rise, to endure, and to claim one's place even when the world is set against you. And as we leave Yasuke in this uncertain twilight, the stage is set for the final chapter, examining how his story has been rediscovered, mythologized, and celebrated in modern times. From obscure chronicles to Netflix adaptations, Yasuke's journey from forgotten warrior to global symbol demonstrates that even a brief life in the eye of history can leave an indelible mark.
Though Yasuke disappeared from historical records after 1582, his story refused to be buried completely. For centuries, he lingered in obscure Jesuit accounts and Japanese chronicles, mentioned only in passing, a curiosity, a foreign warrior whose remarkable journey was almost too extraordinary to record fully. Yet even in silence, the legend of the African samurai survived, waiting for the right time to resurface. In the 20th century, historians began to piece together Yasuke's life. Scholars examined Jesuit letters, Japanese battle records, and the writings of Nobunaga's retainers, gradually revealing the outline of a man who had defied every expectation. He had been a slave, brought across the ocean, displayed as a spectacle, yet he transformed himself into a samurai. He had fought in major battles, protected a legendary warlord, and navigated a foreign society that was rigid, hierarchical, and often hostile. For historians, Yasuke became more than an oddity. He became a lens through which to examine race, mobility, and power in feudal Japan. Modern popular culture has embraced Yasuke's story with unprecedented enthusiasm. In 2019, The Boy Who Became a Samurai introduced young readers to his incredible journey, blending history with imagination. Graphic novels, anime series, and video games followed, each interpreting his life with creative license, but always grounded in the undeniable fact of his achievements. Netflix's 2021 anime series Yasuke reimagined him as a mythical warrior, merging historical events with fantasy elements. Video games like Assassin's Creed Shadows have also immortalized him, placing him in the broader global imagination. What's remarkable about Yasuke's resurgence is not just that people are telling his story, but how they are telling it. For centuries, his narrative was marginalized because it didn't fit neatly into conventional histories. He was an outsider, a foreigner, someone who challenged the rigid social norms of Japan. Today, Yasuke's life is celebrated precisely because it defies expectation. He reminds audiences that greatness can come from the most unlikely places, and that courage, adaptability, and loyalty are universal values. Yasuke's story also sparks important discussions about representation and historical memory. Why was a man of such extraordinary skill and loyalty almost erased from history? What does it say about whose stories are told and whose are forgotten? Yasuke forces us to confront the biases of historical record-keeping, the invisibility of marginalized figures, and the ways in which race and origin have shaped recognition and legacy. His life is a reminder that history is not just a series of dates and battles, but a collection of stories, and some stories are more fragile than others. Despite his disappearance, Yasuke's legacy continues to inspire. Young people, especially those of African descent, see in him a figure who transcended enormous odds. He embodies resilience, surviving enslavement, navigating foreign lands, and thriving in one of the most hierarchical societies in the world. His story speaks to the possibility of transformation, the capacity for courage, and the enduring impact of extraordinary individuals, even when history seems to overlook them. Yasuke's memory also reminds us that history is alive,
Rediscovering his life has led to debates about interpretation, myth-making, and cultural memory. Some argue that modern adaptations exaggerate his significance, while others celebrate them as necessary reclamation of a forgotten hero. Yet in every retelling, one truth remains. A man who began as a slave became a samurai, an African who became Japanese in a society that never fully accepted him, and a legend whose life continues to challenge, inspire, and captivate. Despite his disappearance, Yasuke's legacy continues to inspire. Young people, especially those of African descent, see in him a figure who transcended enormous odds. He embodies resilience, surviving enslavement, navigating foreign lands, and thriving in one of the most hierarchical societies in the world. His story speaks to the possibility of transformation, the capacity for courage, and the enduring impact of extraordinary individuals, even when history seems to overlook them. Moreover, Yasuke reminds us that history is alive. Rediscovering his life has led to debates about interpretation, myth-making, and cultural memory. Some argue that modern adaptations exaggerate his significance, while others celebrate them as necessary reclamation of a forgotten hero. Yet in every retelling, one truth remains. A man who began as a slave became a samurai, an African who became Japanese in a society that never fully accepted him, and a legend whose life continues to challenge, inspire, and captivate. History may not know how his final chapter ended, but the story of Yasuke, the African samurai who stood beside legends, will never be forgotten. His journey is proof that even in the harshest circumstances, transformation is possible, and that one life lived with courage and purpose can echo across centuries, inspiring those who dare to imagine a world beyond the limitations placed upon them.